Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. It's Fran here, and I'm back with a 3-hit team selection this game week. The reason why I'm not actually doing a team selection right now is because I'm going to leave it for my kind of live stream, just because, full transparency, I don't want to reveal any transfers because there could be postponements from the point in time that I actually post this video to tomorrow, and for that reason it doesn't really make sense for me to actually do any early transfers myself. I'm not going to capture any price rises. I don't think it's worthwhile. And then on top of that, there isn't really a point in me showing transfers when I don't know which game could be postponed and things like that. So at this point in time, I'm just going to have to ask you guys to kindly wait. I will show my team selection on the live stream just like I did last week. As far as the free hit, though, I still think it's worth maybe envisioning at least a backup structure that we have, right? Because what we know is that there are these kind of four fixtures that we should be able to target, and the best fixtures to target at this point in time are going to be the City fixture versus Newcastle, the Arsenal fixture versus Leeds, and then some of the picks you're going to be picking are based on teams that have and players that have been playing fantastically, and assets that you probably want to hedge against in this game week because they don't have particularly bad games. The reason why I say that is because players like James, Jota, Salah, and Trent, in theory, should all be able to perform well. Wolves don't really have a kind of way to attack consistently, and I don't think that they'll actually create too many chances versus Chelsea, which is why I think there's a high likelihood that Chelsea will get a clean sheet. And because Chelsea will get a clean sheet, or that's something that I predict, then James should have the basis for a good game. However, Wolves have a very good defense, and that's exactly why I'm not looking interested in Mount. So if we kind of go back to the midfield for now, kind of discussing Salah and Jota, the interesting thing with the triple Liverpool this week is if you are on a free hit, you definitely have the opportunity to move away from it. And maybe that does call for dropping Jota out of the team. I would probably keep Salah for sure. He's just been in fantastic form. He also got rested, arguably, by kind of being substituted off rather early in the Newcastle game. And we have the opportunity for Firmino as well to feature instead of Jota if he's actually fit to play this Newcastle game. So that could be a good reason to go out of Jota. But I've chosen to stick with Jota at this point in time because I still think you can find a team structure that fits two Man City midfielders, having Cancelo back in the team, who clearly is the most defensive City defender. He provides so much in terms of open play, and I think if you look at, for example, the Wolves game, the underlying stats there, that's a good example for how much Cancelo can create. Even though he doesn't provide goals and assists necessarily on a game-to-game basis, we know he can explode, and versus Newcastle, a very fragile defense, there's ample opportunity for him to do that. So for me, the way I'd see this team structure is I would clearly play a 5 midfield setup, and I'd start all 5 midfielders. I would play Gundogan, I'd play Salah, I'd play Jota, I'd play Foden. The reason why I've picked Gundogan at this point in time because I think he is still very well priced. And Bernardo comes off of what seems to be some sort of injury niggle that Pep described, but he seems fit for the game. However, Gundogan actually did look fantastic in the second half, and I think that's a good enough basis for me to say that he probably deserves to start this next game. Bernardo had a little bit of a rough game versus Leeds. He did miss a sitter in that game. But that's not enough to say that I think he'll be taken out of the lineup. I think Bernardo is going to be a constant fixture this season. I just think that this game, especially versus a very, very weakened defense, we can see once again a very good Gundogan performance. And I'm not exactly sure whether he'll start. That's a very, very kind of hotly contested debate because you now have, with Kevin De Bruyne fit, so much rotation between, let's say, Jesus and Mahrez. Then you have Sterling kind of competing with someone like Grealish at the same time. So Sterling could easily come on for maybe someone like Grealish. I can see Foden starting probably once again. And then Bernardo and Gundogan's positions are usually kind of contested because Rodri or Fernandinho is one permanent fixture in the team. So it's kind of choosing between Gundogan and Bernardo. And I'm still tempted to go for Gundogan, as I said, just because he's looks fine. And maybe this is a good game to kind of be cautionary, with Pep looking at Bernardo and his potential injury. So that's kind of the basis. I'd say maybe picking Gundogan is wise. I think he should be able to contribute to this game. And if we remember, for example, when he said that Gundogan was fit versus Leeds, he deliberately didn't start Gundogan after saying that he had some back issues. And I feel like that's kind of similar to maybe Bernardo's situation, where maybe due to the issues that he suffered in the Leeds game, Gundogan gets the start. And maybe if Gundogan doesn't perform well, then Bernardo can come in. For me, though, I still think that within the first half, Man City can blow by Newcastle, and that's enough of a kind of reason to go for Gundogan. And you have the kind of security of at least having a very, very solid bench this game week with the free hit. So that's going to be my midfield 5. If you actually look towards the forwards, I think that you clearly want to play Watkins and Lacazette. The reason why is because They're pretty much the only forwards available. None of the other Aston Villa forwards are interesting. I wouldn't go for Ings at this point in time. He's not starting games. They clearly want to play around Watkins, have players that can actually press and contribute to the attack and part of the kind of intensity that they provide as a team early on in the game, which usually kind of causes teams to collapse forward and allows them to counterattack quite easily. Watkins is perfect for that structure, and I think he will remain there, whereas Ings is someone who I imagine will probably only come on late in games if they're actually desperately in need of goals. With Lacazette, he's clearly a little bit overpriced. So the issue with Lacazette for me is that I don't think he's a fantastic option to kind of disrupt your team structure and your team budget for, even though this fixture seems wonderful. And then the next fixture versus Norwich is very, very good. Perhaps it could be the short-term swing that everyone is looking for. We know that, especially with people who went for Watkins last week, that you benefited a lot from playing versus Norwich. But I still think Lacazette's only really worth it for a free hit, and the reason why is because he clearly is still a focal point of this Arsenal attack, and we know that this Arsenal attack should be able to at least create significant chances versus Leeds, as they have done in the recent weeks versus teams like West Ham and Southampton and so on and so forth. So that's exactly why you want to have Lacazette in your team. I just think that he's going to be a bit of a talisman for Arsenal, especially since we know this Leeds side has a propensity to kind of concede chances in the centre, and that's going to be where Lacazette is kind of covering at times, even though he'll be making diagonal runs towards the left and right side of the post, so that players like Martinelli and Tomiyasu can run in behind. But for now, that's exactly why I've gone for the structure. I think Martinelli, as I said, has also been in fantastic form. Just going back to him very briefly, he is someone who definitely finds his place in this team just because he's been that incisive, both on the left and right wing at times. You can see that through the kind of attacks and his counter-attack created versus United, and also several games since then where he's had consistently good performances and has probably deserved his start in the side. Another thing is when you look at the Smith Rowe kind of substitution, he was coming on for Odegaard, so perhaps that could inform us a little bit as to whether Martinelli will continue to start. Martinelli was subbed off very late in the game, and from that basis, I think he is justified to continue playing a starting role on this left-hand side, as Nicolas Pepe is someone who deals with Saka on the right. You could also go for Saka at this point in time if you have a little bit more team value, but we'll see what happens there. In terms of the defenders, I think there's not much explanation that needs to be made. As I said, James is very logical even on a free hit, just because he is that kind of focal point of this Chelsea attack outside of Mount, and he has the trust of Tuchel to actually continue playing game for the full 90 minutes. And even though Alonso arguably got a little bit lucky to keep his clean sheet, you can clearly see that Tuchel doesn't necessarily rely on Alonso for 90 minutes. I think Alonso is definitely going to struggle, especially with the fixture congestion at his age. However, Chelsea are dealing with a lot of midfield issues, so that's exactly why I've only really gone for one Chelsea player here. We could be seeing maybe Jorginho continuing to play on a very, very kind of dubious injury situation. It seems like he is really struggling now with his back, and then Ruben Loftus-Cheek being injured probably calls for Saul to actually play in the midfield, which means actually Alonso could play this week. So maybe if you want to, let's say, downgrade James, you could actually go for Alonso once again. He could at least lock you the clean sheet points before he gets substituted for maybe another attacker, someone like Hudson-Odoi. In terms of the actual keeper, I've gone for Ramsdale first, and I'm looking to play Martinez off the bench. The reason why is because I think Ramsdale has a great opportunity to at least get lots of saves in versus Leeds, and that's kind of the basis why I've picked Ramsdale. I also think this Arsenal defense have shown to be very, very astute versus these mid-table and bottom half sides, as I keep kind of regurgitating. The thing is, Arsenal stats overall don't look very good defensively, but that's because they're massively, giving away goals versus these big teams such as Chelsea, such as Man City, and such as Liverpool. Those are games where they were absolutely devastated. The XG for the enemy teams were incredibly high, and I think that has skewed the Arsenal defensive figures to make people think that Arsenal doesn't make sense. And then you of course have Martinez, who can play on the first day, which is a very excellent coverage versus a Burnley side who hasn't scored a goal potentially in half a month. So that's a really big positive there, having Martinez come off the bench. And the same logic kind of applies towards Mings, who will be sitting on the bench as well. I think Mings actually does have a relatively high ceiling versus Burnley, but we know Burnley are still quite a large team. I think they will deal with the set pieces quite well. I do think that Mings can get a clean sheet, so but I would still keep him there. And then just for the sake of fixture diversity, I've picked Davies as part of the defensive bench as well. But I actually think I would slot him all the way towards the back of the defense. Probably Mings first substitution, then Gelhardt second. The reason why Gelhardt is here is because I am almost certain he will start this game versus Leeds. With Dan James coming out and Jamie Shackleton also being injured, you'll see Dallas kind of slot back into the right back position. You'll see another midfielder come in, and you'll probably see Gelhardt come in one of the attacking positions alongside Rafinha and Harrison and Tyler Roberts. So that's exactly how I see how Leeds will play this week. We'll see what happens, but I think Gelhardt's a fantastic kind of second bench option as well. Someone who could maybe potentially explode if, let's say, one of the fixtures goes poorly. And that's kind of, for me, the best way to navigate the free hit. You have at least 3 players from each game, with the exception to Chelsea and Wolves. The kind of we have in a sense overloaded a little bit on the Liverpool and Spurs game, but we probably should have enough coverage from players playing in the first day for us to be kind of to feel secure. So that's kind of how I feel about the free hit selection. Perhaps things will change with postponements, and we'll discuss that once again on the live stream. But for now, this could be my free hit selection. I hope you guys have a wonderful game week, and hopefully not too many issues where you actually have to activate the free hit. I have to preface that once again, if you are considering a free hit, do think about the ramification of potential double game weeks and triple game weeks in the future, and what a free hit at that point in time could do for you. Obviously, I completely understand that some people might have 4 to 5 to 6 players, a very, very kind of precarious situation, and very close to, for example, me, as I'm on 7 players myself. But you kind of have to make do and probably make that calculated adjustment to think about whether you want to free hit or not. And the best of luck to you as well. Remember that also you can kind of stack transfers in tonight as well to capture price rises. And if you manage to capture price rises and you still want to free hit, or you're planning to free hit anyways, then that's a very good plan, because you could capture price rises and maybe go for someone like a Lacazette or a Watkins who's about to price rise tonight. And if you don't want to free hit tomorrow, then you would have captured the price rise for free. And if there's kind of COVID suspensions, then you could do that. But that's only if you're certain that you're maybe going to play the free hit, if some serious postponements will happen. And that's basically all I'll say for now. Hope you guys have a wonderful week.